The sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the dusty plains of Wyoming. It was a quiet evening, the kind that made one feel safe and at peace, but tonight, that peace shattered in an instant. The stillness was broken by the sharp crack of a telegraph wire, a rare sound that carried through the cool air like a warning. The message arrived with a jolt, urgent, trembling hands delivering bad news that would change everything. In the small town of Red Hill, the sheriff's office flickered with dim light as the telegram was read aloud. The words hit hard, echoing in the silent room. Missing boy, age 8, last seen near the creek. Last night, suspect unknown. Immediate assistance required. The message was simple but heavy with implications. Something had gone terribly wrong. Within minutes, the entire town seemed to awaken from a collective nightmare. The sheriff, a grizzled man named Tom, knew he had to act fast. His heart pounded with a mix of fear and resolve. The boy, little Samuel, was known to everyone. An innocent soul with bright eyes and a contagious laugh. Now he was gone, and the worst possible thoughts flooded his mind. As the townsfolk gathered in the dimly lit main street, a young boy burst through the crowd, tears streaming down his face, voice trembling as he called out, "Please come with me." His small hands clutched a ragged piece of cloth, and his wide, tear-streaked eyes begged for help. His name was Jesse, Samuel's best friend, and what he was about to reveal would plunge everyone into an even deeper despair. Jesse's voice cracked as he recounted how he had last seen Samuel near the creek late the previous night, chasing fireflies, full of innocence and wonder. But then he saw something. Shadows moving quickly, figures lurking in the darkness. When he called out, Samuel had run to him, fear etched into his young face. Jesse had tried to follow, but the shadows had disappeared into the night, leaving only the boy's trembling presence behind. The townspeople listened in stunned silence, their minds racing with fears of what could have happened. The atmosphere grew tense, an undercurrent of dread that something terrible had unfolded. The sheriff's jaw tightened as he realized the gravity of the situation. The boy's cry for help was not just an appeal for rescue. It was a plea for salvation. Without hesitation, the community mobilized. Men armed with lanterns, women clutching blankets, children huddling close. Everyone was desperate to find Samuel. The night air grew colder, the darkness enveloping the land like a shroud. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, seemed to echo with the possibility of danger. As they searched along the creek and into the thick woods beyond, a chilling discovery was made. A small, torn piece of Samuel's shirt tangled in the underbrush. It was a heartbreaking clue, confirming that the boy had been there recently. The scene was haunting. An empty trail, footprints leading into the shadows, and a sense that time was running out. Suddenly, a faint cry pierced the silence. Soft, desperate, familiar. It was Samuel. His voice was weak but unmistakable. The crowd surged forward, following the sound through the tangled thicket. And then, they saw him, huddled behind a fallen log, tears streaming down his face, trembling as he clung to a battered teddy bear. But what they saw next froze them in place. Standing just beyond Samuel was a figure cloaked in darkness, silent and still. The figure's eyes gleamed with an unsettling light, and in that moment, everyone understood. This was no ordinary person. It was something else. Something that had taken Samuel. Something that had left behind only sorrow and broken hearts. The realization hit everyone like a thunderclap. The boy had been taken, not just lost or kidnapped, but something far more sinister. The figure's presence was a harbinger of darkness, a symbol of a nightmare come alive. The town's hope wavered as the truth settled in. They might never see Samuel again, and the shadows that haunted the creek would stay with them forever. As dawn approached, the villagers gathered around the boy, tears in their eyes and despair in their hearts. The story of Samuel's disappearance would become a legend, one of tragedy, mystery, and the unbreakable bond of a community that refused to forget. In the quiet, the wind carried a faint whisper. Sometimes, the most innocent among us are caught in the darkness, and only love and courage can bring the light back. And so, the story of that tragic night would be told for generations, reminding everyone that even in the deepest darkness, hope can ignite, and the tears of a little boy can become a cry that echoes through history, urging us to never turn away from those in need. In the quiet hush of that fateful night, when shadows stretched long over the rocky hills, there was only one thing that kept the young cowboy's heart pounding with unwavering resolve: his promise. It was a promise made long ago, whispered softly in the dim glow of a dying fire, a vow carved into his soul that no darkness could ever extinguish. That promise was to his little brother, Samuel. Samuel was the light of his life, a boy with wide, curious eyes and a laugh that could chase away any storm. They had grown up together on the dusty plains, inseparable in every adventure, every scrape, every dream. Their bond wasn't just sibling love. It was sacred, forged through years of shared secrets and silent understanding. It was the kind of connection that words couldn't contain, an unbreakable thread woven into the fabric of their spirits. One chilly evening, as the stars blinked faintly in the vast sky, the young cowboy Jesse made a silent vow to Samuel's memory. He promised to always protect him, to never let anything or anyone take him away. It was a promise born from love, a love so fierce that Jesse would have fought the devil himself to keep Samuel safe. That night, Jesse swore that no matter what, he would find his brother if he ever went missing. That promise became his moral compass, guiding every step he took into the darkness. Years later, that vow was still alive in Jesse's heart. Now, in the aftermath of Samuel's disappearance, it burned brighter than ever. The boy had run to him, tears streaming, pleading, "Please come with me." Jesse saw the terror in Samuel's eyes, fear not just of being lost but of something far worse. That fear fueled Jesse's resolve. His moral debt to his brother was a sacred oath. It was the core of who he was. It was what kept him from turning away, even when the night seemed endless and hope flickered like a dying ember. When Jesse found his brother cowering behind the fallen log, trembling in the shadows, the weight of that promise pressed down on his chest. The tears in Samuel's eyes weren't just tears of fear. They were a silent plea for salvation, a desperate longing for safety that only Jesse could provide. The boy's cry, "Please come with me," echoed in Jesse's mind, reaffirming his purpose. This wasn't merely about finding Samuel. It was about fulfilling a sacred vow made long ago, a moral obligation that transcended fear, danger, and despair. In that moment, Jesse understood that their bond was more than blood. It was a moral fiber, an unbreakable vow that had weathered every storm. It was the promise to stand by each other no matter what darkness lurked ahead. The tears of Samuel, the trembling voice, and the trembling hands, all of it was a testament to how deeply that bond ran. It was the reason Jesse would risk everything, to defy the shadows, to fight through the despair, to bring Samuel back from whatever nightmare had taken him. As he knelt beside his brother, Jesse's heart swelled with a mixture of sorrow and fierce love. The promise he had made years ago echoed loud and clear. He would never leave Samuel's side. That promise was more than words. It was a sacred debt that he owed, a moral anchor that grounded him in the storm. It was the reason he fought to hold on to hope, to cling to the belief that love and loyalty could conquer even the darkest evil. In that quiet, trembling moment, Jesse made another vow, not just to Samuel but to himself. No matter how harrowing the night, how deep the shadows, he would carry that promise forward. Because that promise was his moral duty, his sacred purpose, his unwavering truth. It was the reason the boy's tears moved everyone to tears, because it was a testament to the power of love. A love so strong that it could withstand the storms of darkness and bring a lost soul back home. The old garage was silent except for the faint hum of the wind seeping through cracks in the weathered walls. Dust motes danced in the dim light, settling over worn-out tools and faded photographs. Jesse sat on a battered bench, his head bowed, eyes fixed on a small, battered box in his trembling hands. The air was thick with the scent of oil and memories long buried. His fingers traced the edges of an old, faded letter. A letter he had read hundreds of times, but could never bring himself to throw away. The words, penned in a shaky hand, spoke of love, hope, and a promise he had broken long ago. His gaze drifted to a scar running across his forearm, a jagged line from a childhood accident he refused to forget. It was a reminder of innocence lost, of mistakes made in youth that haunted him still. Next to it, a faded photograph caught his eye. A young boy with bright eyes and a wide smile, holding a small dog in his arms. That boy was him, Jesse, before the weight of guilt and regret had settled into his bones. He looked at the photo and felt a pang deep inside, an ache that never quite went away. The room was cluttered with relics of a life filled with both love and loss, medals tarnished by time, a broken watch that no longer kept time, and a stack of old letters tied with a frayed ribbon. Each item told a story, a fragment of a past he desperately tried to forget but couldn't. The scars on his hands and arms weren't just physical. They symbolized the battles he'd fought within himself, the mistakes that had carved deep into his soul. Jesse's eyes welled with tears as he clutched the box to his chest. Inside was a small, tattered teddy bear, the only remaining keepsake from his childhood. He remembered how he had promised Samuel he'd always protect him, how he'd sworn to keep him safe no matter what. That promise had been the anchor of his life, until the day Samuel disappeared, and everything shattered. Now, sitting in this lonely garage, Jesse felt the weight of that broken vow pressing down on him like a stone. He closed his eyes, the memories flooding back. Samuel's laughter, the nights they spent dreaming of the future, the day he'd held his brother in his arms for the last time. He remembered the moment he'd failed him, the moment he'd let fear or doubt creep in, and how that had torn his world apart. That day haunted him more than any ghost from the past, more than any physical scar. It was the ache of loss, the guilt of not holding on tighter, of not being enough. His breath hitched as he fought back tears, but they spilled over anyway, tracing silent trails down his dirt-streaked face. The room seemed to mirror his broken spirit. The peeling paint, the shattered clock, the empty space where Samuel's favorite toy once sat. It was as if the entire place mourned with him, echoing his loneliness and regret. Every crack in the wall, every faded poster on the wall, told the story of a life marked by love and loss, an unresolvable ache that refused to fade. In that quiet, Jesse's heart ached with a truth he couldn't voice. He felt unworthy of redemption, haunted by the ghost of what could have been. His past was a tangle of scars and memories, each one a reminder of a promise broken, a family torn apart, a love lost to time. The weight of guilt pressed heavily on his chest, suffocating yet familiar. He longed to turn back the clock, to undo the mistakes, to hold Samuel once more. But all he had now was this empty room and the echoes of a broken past. As the sun dipped lower outside, casting long shadows across the cluttered space, Jesse whispered to no one but himself, "I'm sorry." The words felt hollow but necessary. They were a prayer, an acknowledgement of his pain, his guilt, and his humanity. In that moment, surrounded by relics of a life he couldn't reclaim, Jesse found a fragile hope that maybe, someday, forgiveness might come, and the scars he carried would tell not just of pain but of resilience. And perhaps, in the quiet, he could finally start to heal. Jesse's voice cracked as he pulled out his battered radio, the device trembling in his hand. The night was thick with silence, but his call cut through it with a desperate clarity. "This is Jesse. I need all of you. Come quick. We've got a boy missing, possibly taken. I don't care who's listening. Just get here." His voice carried a weight that spoke of years of loyalty, of bonds forged through fire and hardship. Then, slowly, one by one, the responses began to crackle over the static, faint but undeniable. First to answer was Sam, an old friend from Jesse's past, once a soldier, now a quiet guardian of the town. Sam's voice was calm but steady, carrying the authority of someone who'd stared down chaos and come out unbroken. "Jesse, I'm on my way. Loyalty's what we stand for. You can count on me, brother." His words were simple but profound, a vow of unwavering support rooted in decades of shared struggles and sacrifices. Sam's presence alone brought a sense of security, an unspoken promise that no darkness could tear them apart. Next, the line buzzed with the gravelly voice of Big Mike, a biker whose reputation was built on courage, fearless and unyielding. "You need me, Jesse? I'm riding in hot. Nobody's taking what's ours without a fight. We protect our own, no matter what. I'll be there before you blink." Big Mike's rough exterior masked a heart that beat fiercely for justice. His loyalty was forged in the fires of loyalty and brotherhood, and his courage was legendary. He'd face any storm to guard the innocent. Then came Rosa, an outsider and healer, whose wisdom was born of years witnessing both pain and redemption. Her voice was soft but commanding, carrying a calm resolve. "Jesse, I've seen darkness and I've seen hope. We do what's right, even when it's hard. I'll be with you. Remember, sometimes the greatest strength is in kindness and understanding." Rosa's words reminded everyone that true valor was not just in fighting but in healing, in choosing hope over despair. Finally, a crackling voice from across the line, familiar yet weathered, Old Man Harris, a veteran who had seen too much but still believed in justice. "Count me in. I've lived long enough to see both tragedy and salvation. We're all connected, and I'll stand with you. We're stronger together. Every lesson, every scar, every memory. Let's bring that boy home." His presence was a testament to wisdom earned through hardship, a reminder that experience and patience could be our greatest tools against evil. As Jesse listened to their voices, a flicker of hope ignited within him. Each ally represented a human value: loyalty, courage, wisdom, redemption, threads woven into the fabric of their unity. They weren't just individuals. They were a collective force bound by shared morals, a testament to what humanity could be when united against injustice. In that moment, the night felt less oppressive. Jesse saw in his mind a mosaic of faces, each carrying their own stories, their own scars, their own reasons for fighting. Together, they formed an unbreakable chain, each link vital, each connection sacred. Their presence was a beacon in the darkness, a symbol that no evil could stand against the power of genuine loyalty, unwavering courage, and steadfast hope. They would come, Jesse knew, each one driven by the values that made them human, values that no shadow could erase. Their unity was their strength, and their collective purpose was to bring that little boy back, to restore the broken pieces of their community, and to remind the world that justice, compassion, and love could still prevail. As the line went silent, Jesse felt a renewed sense of purpose. They might be scattered by miles and different paths, but tonight they were one, fighting for what was right, driven by the values that made them human, and that, he believed, was the greatest power of all. The first light of dawn broke gently over the horizon, casting a pale, golden glow across the endless plains. The storm that had threatened all night finally passed, leaving behind a sky painted with streaks of pink and orange. Jesse sat on his old horse, the cool morning air sharp against his face, his mind heavy with the weight of what lay ahead. Every mile he traveled felt like a mile deeper into a journey both literal and symbolic, a path through darkness toward hope, through despair toward redemption. The landscape around him was vast and open, yet within him, a storm of doubt raged just as fiercely. Memories flooded his mind. The promise he made to Samuel, the boy's trembling face, the tears that haunted his every thought. That promise wasn't just words. It was a sacred vow, a thread that tethered him to a past he couldn't escape. Now, each step forward felt like walking through a storm of his own making, the wind whipping through the fields mirroring the chaos within. As he pushed on, the landscape shifted. The highway stretched ahead like a ribbon of possibility, slick with rain from the night storm. Each mile marker passed with a quiet, relentless rhythm, markers of time, of hope, of the fleeting nature of safety. Jesse's heart pounded with anticipation and fear, his inner voice whispering doubts. What if he was too late? What if the darkness had already claimed him? His thoughts drifted to the night Samuel ran to him, tears streaming, pleading for rescue. That image burned brightly in his mind, fueling his every move. The boy's cry, "Please come with me," had been a call to arms, a plea that echoed in Jesse's soul. As he rode through the rain-drenched landscape, memories of simpler days flickered in his mind. The days when his brother's laughter filled their small home, when promises of protection seemed so easy, so certain. Now that promise felt like a fragile thread, stretched thin and trembling under the weight of reality. The storm had washed away the darkness, but it had also revealed the raw, aching truth of his loss. His mind wandered to the moment he'd last seen Samuel, running ahead, carefree, chasing fireflies, before everything had fallen apart. That innocence, so precious, now seemed like a distant dream slipping beyond reach. The landscape grew darker as night fell again, the shadows lengthening across the deserted highway. The moon, a silver sentinel, cast cold light on the empty road ahead. The wind howled like a mournful cry, echoing Jesse's own feelings of loneliness and desperation. Each mile was a testament to his resolve, a symbol of the sacrifice he bore, an unspoken acknowledgement of the price of keeping a promise. The journey was both physical and spiritual, a test of his faith in love, loyalty, and hope. Every bump in the road was a reminder of the hardships he'd endured, lost friends, broken dreams, moments of doubt, and yet, he pressed on, driven by the unseen but palpable power of his vow. His inner thoughts flickered like shadows, reminders of memories long past, regrets that gnawed at his soul, and the flickering hope that somehow, beyond the horizon, he would find Samuel safe. The landscape finally opened up into a valley bathed in dawn's early light, lush with green and alive with the promise of new beginnings. Jesse's eyes searched every corner, every shadow, his heart pounding with a mixture of hope and dread. The journey had tested every fiber of his being. It had demanded courage, sacrifice, and unwavering faith. Now, standing at the edge of this new day, he understood that the journey was more than miles traveled. It was a pilgrimage through pain toward redemption. The landscape was a mirror of his soul. Scarred, battered, but still resilient, still fighting. Each step forward was a testament to the unbreakable bond that had carried him this far, the promise to his brother, to himself, to never give up. As the sun rose higher, bathing the world in light, Jesse took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his journey settle into quiet acceptance. The road ahead was uncertain, but he knew, deep in his heart, that the promise he'd made was worth every mile, every storm, every sacrifice. Because sometimes, the greatest journeys are not measured in distance, but in the courage to face the darkness and the hope to find the light waiting just beyond the horizon. The journey had been long and relentless, but now, as the town came into view, a strange stillness settled over the group. The gravel crunched softly beneath their boots as they approached the small hospital on the outskirts, its white paint chipped and weathered from years of storms and neglect. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the empty street, and the air was thick with anticipation. Jesse led the way, every muscle tight with purpose, his eyes fixed on the building ahead. Behind him, the others moved in an unspoken formation, silent, resolute, a wall of humanity that refused to break. Their presence was a powerful tableau of grief and resolve, each face marked with exhaustion yet fierce with determination. The weight of what they carried, the memory of Samuel, the promise made, the hope that refused to die, pushed them forward, every step echoing like a drumbeat of impending confrontation. As they entered the hospital, The sterile scent of disinfectant clung to the air, but what drew every eye was the group's quiet strength. They moved as one, a steady force of presence that filled the space with unspoken authority. The nurses and doctors looked up from their routines, eyes widening at the sight of this gathering. An assembly of cowboys, townsfolk, and friends united by a shared pain. Their faces told stories of sleepless nights, tears shed in secret, and the burning desire for justice. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint shuffling of boots and the whispered prayers that seemed to hang in the air like fragile threads. Jesse's gaze met the eyes of the others, each of them understanding that this was no longer a journey of miles, but a battlefield of souls. The town's quiet streets had been a neutral ground, a place of everyday life, but now they transformed into an arena where courage would be tested, where the strength of their unity would determine what came next. The group's formation was deliberate, a line that stretched from the doorway into the heart of the hospital, a visual barrier between chaos and hope. Their stance was unwavering, shoulders squared, eyes fixed ahead, each person embodying the weight of their collective grief and the fierce resolve to face whatever darkness awaited. As they moved deeper into the town square, the courthouse loomed at the end of a quiet street, its windows like watchful eyes. The building's dark brick and heavy wooden doors seemed to hold the secrets of countless struggles, of justice sought and justice denied. The crowd that gathered outside was small but intimidating, a silent, watchful force. The townspeople, standing shoulder to shoulder, formed a living wall of resolve. Their silence was thick, heavy with unspoken stories of loss and hope, a testament to the power of shared grief. The group's presence was like a storm gathering on the horizon, calm on the surface, but with the promise of unleashing something fierce. The moment was frozen in time, the quiet before the storm. Every face, every stance, every breath was loaded with meaning. The horses they rode had been left behind, their hooves silent on the dirt, as if even nature itself held its breath. The air crackled with tension, the kind that makes your skin crawl, yet also ignites a spark of defiance. The group's unity radiated outward, a visual power that could not be ignored. They stood as a testament to the journey they had endured, through storms, tears, and silent prayers, and now, they prepared to face the battlefield that awaited. This was the crossing from the journey into the arena of truth, the transition from wandering on lonely roads to confronting the darkness that threatened to consume their small town. The scene was a mosaic of shadows and light, faces set with determination, eyes burning with the fire of unspoken promises. The silence stretched long and heavy, hanging like a shroud over the gathering, before the inevitable clash of conflict and courage erupted. The group's collective presence, poised and unyielding, was a silent challenge to whatever evil lurked behind those courthouse doors. In that moment, they understood that the battle was not just for justice, but for the soul of their community. And as they stood there, united in purpose and heartbreak, they knew that whatever came next would test everything they believed in, strike at the heart of their hope, and demand every ounce of strength they could summon. The visual power of their formation, their silence, and their resolve prepared them for what was to come, turning their quiet vigil into a storm of defiance before the first shot was fired. The room was heavy with silence, the kind that pressed in from every corner and made every breath feel like a struggle. The air smelled of stale paper and quiet dread, but beneath that, a deeper tension simmered, an invisible battle of wits and morality. Jesse stood just inside the doorway, eyes fixed on the figure behind the desk, the man with authority, the one who wielded power with a polished veneer of righteousness. The judge, or perhaps a doctor or pastor, someone revered by the town, whose words and actions had long held sway over their lives. Today, that authority was being tested, and Jesse knew this was no ordinary confrontation. It was a mental duel, a delicate dance of manipulation, intimidation, and moral corruption. The man's smile was thin, a practiced mask that hid the darkness beneath. His eyes gleamed with a calculated confidence, knowing he held the town's respect and fear in his palm. He spoke softly, but each word was laced with subtle menace, a reminder of the leverage he possessed. "You don't understand, Jesse," he said, voice smooth but cold. "This is for the good of everyone. You wouldn't want to be on the wrong side of justice, would you?" The words hung in the air like a poison, designed to make Jesse doubt himself, to make him question whether standing up for Samuel was worth the risk. The man's voice was a masterful tool of intimidation, a whisper that suggested consequences far beyond the courtroom or hospital walls, consequences that would ripple through their lives, tearing apart families and destroying hopes. Jesse's mind raced. He knew this man's reputation, how he twisted facts, how he manipulated truths to serve his own ends. His moral compass was a fragile thing, easily bent and broken under pressure. And now he was trying to bend Jesse's resolve. But Jesse refused to give in. He understood that the real battle wasn't fought with fists or threats. It was fought with integrity, with the strength to stand firm against corruption. His voice was steady, calm, deliberate. "This isn't justice," he said softly. "It's lies, and you know it. You're trying to hide something you're afraid will come to light. That's why you're pushing Samuel away, trying to make everyone believe it's for their safety. But it's not. It's for your own protection, your own power." The man's eyes flickered, momentarily caught off guard by Jesse's unwavering stance. He leaned forward, voice lowering to a whisper that still carried the weight of authority. "You think you can threaten me? You think your words can change what's been decided? I have the law, the community, and the truth on my side. You're just a man standing in my way." Jesse felt the truth of those words, but also saw through the veneer. Power, he knew, was often a fragile illusion, built on fear and manipulation, not righteousness. His inner voice whispered, reminding him of Samuel's innocence, of the boy crying out for help, and of the moral line he would not cross. "Justice isn't about control," Jesse said quietly. "It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard, even when someone with authority tries to make us believe otherwise. I won't let you twist the truth, no matter how much you try to intimidate me." There was a moment of silence, thick and tense, as if the room itself was holding its breath. The man's face betrayed a flicker of anger, but also a begrudging respect, recognition that Jesse was not easily swayed. In that quiet, moral duel, Jesse held his ground. He refused to be manipulated by fear, by threats of consequences, or by the false veneer of righteousness that the man projected. Instead, he offered a silent challenge, an assertion that justice, true justice, could not be silenced, bought, or hidden behind the veneer of authority. As the room's shadows lengthened, Jesse realized that this confrontation was about more than just Samuel or the immediate battle in front of him. It was a test of integrity, of the moral fiber that defined a person's true strength. And in that moment, Jesse knew that standing firm without crossing the line was the greatest victory of all. That even in the face of corruption and intimidation, doing what's right remains the bravest act of all. The room was silent now, every breath held in suspended anticipation. Jesse's hands trembled slightly as he reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper, the only evidence left that could pierce through the darkness that had shrouded their town. This was the moment they had fought for, the truth buried beneath layers of lies, manipulation, and silence. Everyone gathered in that small, dimly lit courtroom or courthouse, eyes fixed on the fragile document that carried the weight of justice. It was a confession, an honest, raw testimony from someone who had seen it all, heard it all, and finally decided to speak. As Jesse unfolded the paper, a collective breath escaped the crowd, and a hush fell like a blanket over the room. The words on that paper, written in shaky handwriting, told the story that had been hidden for years, the story that changed everything. In trembling words, the witness recounted what had happened behind closed doors. In the shadows where the villain had thought he was untouchable, the man with authority, someone revered, trusted, and feared, had used his position to manipulate, to intimidate, to silence those who dared to speak out. The confession detailed how he had cloaked himself in righteousness, hiding his moral corruption behind a facade of respectability. But beneath that veneer, he was a predator, a manipulator who had preyed on the innocence of the vulnerable, including Samuel. The voice on the paper was raw, filled with pain and courage. It described how Samuel had come to him crying, desperate for someone to believe him. "Please come with me," the boy had begged, trembling and lost. The witness's words painted a picture of a child's innocence shattered by a man who wielded power like a weapon, silencing truth and twisting morality to serve his own twisted ends. And then, the revelation: the document included a recording, a hidden tape the witness had managed to preserve. It was a quiet, crackling sound at first, then a voice, faint but unmistakable, belonging to the villain. The recording captured muffled words, a sinister tone cloaked in false concern. "You don't understand, Samuel," the voice whispered, smooth yet menacing. "You're just a boy. You don't matter. Keep quiet, and I'll take care of everything." The words hung in the air, heavy with betrayal, exposing the moral rot behind the mask of authority. The recording was a moral bombshell, a clear, undeniable proof that the villain had been lying the entire time, that he had been manipulating not just Samuel, but everyone, crafting a narrative based on lies, silencing the truth with threats and deception. The confession, the recording, the witness's bravery. These were the keys to unlocking the buried truth. And as the crowd listened, a wave of emotion swept through the room, the kind that cracks open the hardest of hearts. Tears welled up in eyes, sobs broke from chests, and a collective release of bottled-up anger and sorrow burst forth. The villagers who had been manipulated, who had trusted this man, suddenly saw him for what he truly was, a predator hiding behind the guise of morality. Samuel's innocence, once shadowed by fear and silence, now shone brightly in the truth that was finally set free. The villain's mask had been shattered, and the moral weight of what had been hidden for so long was laid bare before everyone. In that moment of revelation, every lie unraveled, every silence broken, and every tear shed signaled a moral victory. Justice was no longer just a distant hope. It was a living, breathing force that had finally emerged from the shadows. The story that had been buried under layers of manipulation and corruption was now exposed for all to see, and in that exposure, a collective moral release occurred. The community, once silenced by fear, found their voice. Samuel's cry for help, "Please come with me," had been the first spark, but now, through the courage of witnesses and the truth revealed, it became a rallying cry for justice, for hope, and for healing. They had uncovered the buried truth, and nothing could ever turn back the tide of that moral awakening. The villain's mask was gone, and the innocence of Samuel was finally vindicated. The story had reached its cathartic climax, a moral explosion that would echo through their lives for generations to come. The gathering was quiet now, a hush that settled over the town like a heavy blanket. The courtroom or makeshift hearing was filled with the weight of what had just been revealed. The evidence, the confession, the recording, the truth, had finally broken through the silence that had long concealed injustice. The villain, once revered in the community, sat there with his head bowed, the mask of respectability completely shattered. His eyes, once confident with authority, now flickered with the slow realization that his lies had been exposed, not just in words, but in the undeniable proof that had been laid bare. The truth had arrived, and it was clear. Justice was no longer a distant hope, but a present, living force. The hero, a man of integrity and moral strength, had kept his promise. Jesse, with trembling hands but unwavering resolve, had brought forth the truth that had been buried beneath years of silence and fear. He had promised Samuel's voice would be heard, and now, through that confession and the recording, Samuel's innocence had been vindicated. It was a moment of profound moral clarity, justice not delivered through revenge or violence, but through the unwavering pursuit of truth and integrity. The villain's fall was public, undeniable, and complete. The community could now see him for what he truly was: a manipulator, a predator cloaked in false respectability. There was no room for denial, no hiding behind the mask of authority anymore. All that remained was the truth in its purest form. Tears welled up in the eyes of many, adults and children alike, an emotional flood that reflected relief, sorrow, and the recognition of a moral victory. This was not a moment of revenge or vindictiveness, but of dignity and human decency. The villagers, who had once trusted blindly, now saw the villain's true face, and the pain of that discovery was palpable. Yet, amidst the tears, there was also a sense of hope, a reassurance that truth and integrity could prevail, even in the darkest of moments. Samuel's cry for help, "Please come with me," had been a plea for rescue, a symbol of innocence lost. Now that plea had become a testament to courage, to the power of speaking out against evil, and to the resilience of a community committed to justice. The community's collective morality was reaffirmed. The villain's fall was not just a personal defeat, but a moral lesson for everyone. Evil can hide behind masks, but truth will always find its way to the surface. Justice, in its purest form, does not seek revenge but seeks to restore balance, to uphold dignity, and to honor the truth. And in this moment, that truth was honored with respect and dignity. The villain was publicly exposed, but he was also given the chance to face the consequences of his actions with humility and acknowledgement. His fall was not marked by cruelty, but by a recognition that his time had come to answer for what he had done. The hero, standing tall and calm, kept his word, serving as a moral anchor for everyone present. His strength was not in violence, but in unwavering commitment to what was right. He knew that true justice was rooted in moral clarity and human compassion. As he watched the villain being led away, his heart was heavy but hopeful. The community was healing, and the moral fabric of their town had been reinforced. They had faced darkness together, and through the courage of the witnesses and the truth that emerged, they had found their way back to the light. Tears continued to flow, but they were tears of release, of pain finally acknowledged, of innocence finally vindicated, of justice finally served. The collective grief transformed into a quiet celebration of morality and human dignity. Samuel's voice, once silenced by fear, now echoed in their hearts as a symbol of hope and resilience. The community knew that this was more than just a moment of justice. It was a reaffirmation of what they stood for: truth, integrity, and compassion. And so, justice arrived, not driven by revenge but by the moral strength of a community that refused to be broken by evil. The villain's fall was a moral lesson etched into their history, a reminder that darkness cannot withstand the light of truth. The community, with tears of relief and dignity in their eyes, looked forward with hope, knowing that honesty and integrity would always be their guiding principles. They had faced the shadows, and in the end, they had chosen the moral high ground, standing together, united in truth, and committed to building a future where justice and compassion reign. As the last of the crowd dispersed, Jesse turned away from the courthouse, his heart heavy but quietly relieved. He had done what he promised, to bring the truth into the light and to see justice fulfilled, not through revenge, but through unwavering integrity. His steps were slow as he mounted his horse, the fading sunlight casting long shadows across the dusty street. The air was thick with a mixture of relief and lingering sorrow, but beneath it all, there was a shimmer of hope, fragile yet real. Jesse knew his work here was done, and now it was time to leave, to step back from the storm of emotion and let the community begin its slow healing. He looked back once, watching the gathered townspeople, some crying, some quietly praying, others simply staring into the distance, each touched by the truth that had finally been uncovered. Their faces reflected pain, yes, but also a renewed strength born from having faced their darkness and choosing to stand for what was right. As he nudged his horse forward, a gentle breeze stirred the dust, carrying away the remnants of grief and fear, whispering promises of renewal. Jesse's figure slowly faded into the horizon, a silhouette against the vast, open sky, a silent witness to the journey of truth and justice. Meanwhile, in a humble cabin on the edge of town, Samuel sat quietly by a window, clutching a small, worn teddy bear, his only comfort in a world that had once seemed so cruel and confusing. The boy's wide eyes, once filled with terror and pleading, now held a quiet hope. With each passing day, he was beginning to see a different future. A future where he could be safe, where his voice mattered, and where innocence could be restored. The community's promise to protect him and keep him safe was more than words. It was a new foundation on which Samuel could build his life. Stories of the hero's courage and the community's resilience would be passed down, inspiring others to stand tall in the face of darkness. The Brotherhood of Cowboys, once united in their pursuit of justice, now gathered one last time at a familiar spot, a hill overlooking the town, where the sunset painted the sky in hues of gold, orange, and crimson. They stood silently, their silhouettes etched against the vibrant horizon, sharing a quiet moment of reflection. Their faces, rugged and weathered, softened with a collective understanding. They had fought not just for justice, but for the soul of their community. The bond among them, forged through courage and honesty, was stronger than ever. As the last light dipped behind the mountains, the stars began to emerge, tiny points of light flickering into existence, reminding everyone that even in the darkest night, hope and guidance can be found. A gentle wind swept across the hilltop, carrying a sense of renewal, whispering promises of new beginnings. It was in that quiet space, staring into the vast, open sky, that they found their symbol of hope, a single star shining brighter than the rest, a beacon for the future they would build together. The night stretched on, peaceful and still, as memories of pain faded into the distant past. The road ahead was open and uncertain, but it was also full of promise, an endless journey toward healing, justice, and new life. And as they turned to leave that sacred place, they carried with them the quiet knowledge that true strength lies not in vengeance, but in integrity and hope. The hero's promise was fulfilled, the victim's innocence restored, and the community's spirit reborn. The open road beckoned, stretching out before them beneath the endless stars, a symbol of limitless possibility and the eternal cycle of renewal. They moved forward into the night, guided by hope, united in their resolve to build a future where truth and kindness would always prevail. And in that silent, luminous sky, the stars watched over them, reminders that even after the darkest storms, light will always return, and new beginnings will always dawn.